Were you buds with Guy Clark?
I talked to him on the phone a couple of times, but I never got to shake his hand.
Yeah.
I heard that song. He put it on one of his records that he did, and that song was just so much a huge. I felt that song in so many ways,
Yeah.
And the only time I ever did that song was that night in Austin. It was the first time we played the new amphitheater down there, and it just felt right to do it. And me and Kenny Greenberg and Wyatt Beard, my piano player, just sat there and did that afternoon and made sure we knew Hemingway's Whiskey, because I was thinking I was going to do it that night, and I'm glad we did. I'm glad we were able to document it.
Yeah. I mean, he was, you're from the eastern part of the world, from me, from Louisiana. I was chasing all that Austin stuff.
Oh, of course.
And Jerry Jeff and Guy, of course, wrote most of those great songs, which Jerry admits to, and Towns and those guys. That stuff coming up from our world was really our country music.
Right.
I mean, I knew about George Jones and whatever because working with truck drivers at my dad's shop and stuff. But really the stuff when we were learning to play music, they were creating their own kind of version of it.
And I didn't get into that until later. I didn't even know about it until later, until I became a part of the songwriting community.
Yeah.
Because in East Tennessee, I was so consumed by country and what we know now as classic rock, what was rock then, and I didn't really know, wasn't educated on the genius of Towns and Jerry Jeff and Guy Clark until I became a part, or was trying to become a part of the songwriting community.
Yeah.
And heard those songs, and then like any creative soul would, you fall in love with it and you are inspired by it.
Guy, for me, he was the guy, like where we were, and we're getting into playing music, and one thing led to another. When he moved to Nashville, to me, because a lot of Texas songwriters, they got their own thing, and it's whatever, and it's their own world, and a lot of them just don't dig Nashville. And when Guy moved to Nashville, it's like, it totally legitimized it for me, because I was so ignorant, is the best word I can come up from. I didn't appreciate the genius of songwriters and whatever. It was just, I thought it was corny hooks and all these things, and it wasn't that cool stuff they were doing until I got here and started trying to make a living at it.
And realized how hard it was.
Oh my God, these guys, they are freaking Hemingway. Okay, But I knew Guy was about to pass, and I just told Barbara one morning. I got up and said, "Man, I got to go do this." And I went over to the hospital, and it was kind of a funky hospital, and I sat in the parking lot in my car for a minute, just trying to figure out, how does this go? How does this work? And Steve Earle pulls up in a car next to me.
Isn't that great?
I said, "I'm so glad to see you." He goes, "I'm
you
glad
guys
to see
together?
you too, man." Oh yeah, we had each other to lean on. But it was a great experience, and Steve played bass in his band and stuff back in Texas. I mean, they knew each other forever. But so we spent like an hour talking about life, love, and guitars a lot. He made guitars and all that, and when I shook his hand to tell him goodbye, he was saying that he never shook his hand, and he didn't let go of it, and he kind of looked at me again, and I hung on, and he goes, "All right, you go break a heart."
Oh,
I'm like, "I'll do my best, pal." So the last thing he said.
That's incredible story.
Yeah, but you saying,
it's an incredible story.
Just thinking of that, though, I mean,
I heard his version of Hemingway's Whiskey, and you could just feel every syllable in it. It was just so honest and so real. Almost didn't record it. I love the song so much, and it's one of those songs that that I don't do every night live.
Yeah.
But it just felt like I had to do that song that night in Austin, and it's one of those songs that I don't ever, when I make a record, Kix, and when I put it out, I don't ever go back and revisit it, because I spend so much time listening to it, creating it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I put it out and then it's gone. But I listen to that, my version of Hemingway's Whiskey, every now and then, and then I go back and listen to guys, because it's just such a source. That music, that song for me was such a source of inspiration. I'm not sure that I would have recorded Hemingway's Whiskey earlier records, because I was so hell-bent on recording the whole record on radio airplay. We got to get this, you're taught a certain way. But when Holly Gleason played me Hemingway's Whiskey, I said, I got to record this song, just as a creative person and as a person that we were talking about the songwriters we love before I come in here. And just that love for songs and the craft of it. And when I heard Hemingway's Whiskey, I was just...
You're courageous about just pulling songs and things that you don't do all the time. And it makes me nervous to think about trying to do something I don't do all the time and sort of half knowing it.
Oh, yeah.
And I get anxiety over,
But it's also what keeps you on the edge out there on the road, too. Like, because I can get in the habit of sometimes just doing the same thing. And it's, as we all have these 911 buttons on stage where you can push the button and nobody can hear you but the band and the crew guys, right? And I like to every now and then hit that button and just throw something out and you could just see that them look around going, oh my God, what are we gonna do? But it does break up the monotony, and it does break up the same old, and I think it's good to throw out songs like that when you're playing it in the live element, and it pushes me too. I mean, Hemingway's Whiskey just wasn't the only example of that, but for the most part, I like to stay pretty close to what we rehearsed, because there's a lot going on with the music.
Sure. But, plus that lighting guy who spent all day programming that thing, he's like, what?
Yeah, those guys.
What kind of lights you want for this?
Those are the guys that really freak out.
Yeah. What do we dial up for this one, Johnny?
Well, but you know what? I do love being spontaneous out there, though. I do love it.
You talking about Guy, and we all have them. I mean, now this album, I went through and listened to it. It's great. We could spend hours talking about cut by cut on this thing, but is there, and that's kind of how just thinking some of our heroes are talking about Know Who I Am, it freaks me out. It makes me sleep a little uneasy at night going, God, it's bigger. I'm sure you probably feel the same way. To me, the relationships that I have mean more than any awards. Just to think, what's of all this stuff, if it's going to pop in your head that night when you go, I can't believe this person is next to me on stage singing with me at my show.
Well, that happened for me the first time when I was with guys like Joe Walsh and Steve Miller, who I don't respect. I mean, I respect a lot of people, but I had the Steve Miller Band's greatest hits in my car every day on the way to school and back, every day, and I listened to the whole record. I mean, I could sing the whole thing.
You are not a bigger Steve Miller freak than I am.
So you get it.
I had a whole box of cassettes, every single one. From Sailor, all the way through. Somewhere around Abracadabra, I kind of started listening.
But to have him and to have guys like Joe Walsh up there on stage beside you, who, my road manager, David Farmer, we've been friends, since we were kids. And we used to get pool sticks and play air guitar to Joe Walsh and the Eagles, and to Rockin' Me Baby by Steve Miller, and to all these songs that just had such an impression on us as kids. And I think that if you ask a lot of my friends that are out on the road with me now, what's been the biggest thrill of this journey? You've won a lot of awards. You've went to a lot of places. You've sang in front of a lot of people on this journey. But what's been the biggest thrill? Well, on top of touching all those people and all those hands, and recording music that they've lived their life with, the biggest thrill for me is to have those heroes in your head, and have listened to their music your whole life, and now to be an adult and playing music for a living, and having those guys standing right beside you and them being the person that you had made up in your head, and them being that person. I mean, it's spiritually a great guy. I mean, musically a great person, and authentically a great guy, and that's been the biggest thrill. And not just to play music with them, but to get to know them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's for my band, my crew, and honestly, to be able to work with the people that you get to work with. Mm-hmm. This live record, it spans a decade of my life, The first recording was in Atlanta, Georgia, the last night of the tour with Dave Matthews.
07, I think.
07. Yeah. And to be able to work with you and Ronnie, to be able to work with Zach and with Eric Church and, Keith Urban and Steve Miller and Sammy Hagar and Joe Walsh. It goes on and on. I mean, just that whole group right there. I mean, it's just been the most beautiful, strange, fun journey that you could think of, I mean, and it's something that when you're a kid, like David and I were, on as kids playing air guitar to the Joker and Rockin' Me Baby, you don't dream of having all those friendships and having that much fun.
Yeah, I know.
Which is what music is supposed to be in touring. It's supposed to be fun and Kix, I say this, I think that when we started this journey and started making this record, Live in No Shoes Nation, and when I first went on my first bus, I think God gave me a big lemon and said, okay, you squeeze all the juice out of it you want to. You know what? I think I'm so proud that me and my road family, I mean, we're still squeezing every single drop out of that we possibly can. And that's kind of the definition of just the amount of fun and then the amount of authentic, I don't know what it's called. There's a certain sense of freedom with writing a great song and going out there and being on the road and having people sing it back to you. I've never had anything in my life that replaces how great that feels, and I just and to have the audience we have, it's just it's beautiful.